A moment later, we found ourselves standing in an outdoor location, a hot wind blowing past us from the south. Indeed, the entire southern sky was ablaze in fire and thick smoke blasted past us every few moments. My immediate thought was that we had been teleported into a war zone, but at least we weren't in the thick of the fighting. Quickly looking about, I saw dozens and dozens of simple wooden beds and cots sitting upon the grassy field here, most of them containing bandaged, bloodied and, in some cases, deceased people. Here and there several clerics and nurses rushed from cot to cot, tending to the wounded. Spending a little time looking around, it appeared Vel had teleported us directly into some sort of field hospital where the wounded, maimed, and defeated could be properly attended to. Again, the actual fighting appeared to be taking place to the south. We weren't in any immediate danger, but I also couldn't help but feel very sorry for all the brave heroes lying here. The scale of the carnage was far worse than what I had witnessed back in Kathleen when our party helped repel the undead attack, none of us able to even find words to express the shock and terror of it all. Summoning all the empathy I could muster and truly looking at each of the wounded here, I soon realized that most of the wounds were caused by fire, most of the defeated souls here had been burned, many in horrific ways. Whatever foe they had faced, it could deliver fire like nothing I had ever seen before. Wandering about the field hospital, it didn't take long before we were noticed. Moments later, a higher-ranking cleric of Sisla approached our party, his robes soiled in blood and his demeanor quite negative. "All of you. Either you're here to fight or you need to help with the wounded, get on with it." "We're here to help the wounded," Kartha responded, surprising even me. "Well, do everything we can." The cleric nodded in agreement, almost expecting the response before going about his own business again. As Kartha stepped in the direction of the closest wounded, however, Sainairs just stood there, a strange look of surprise on his face, almost shock. "Let's go, Sislan," Kartha commanded again. "We're needed, now." I won't assist, a mutin," Sainairs returned, almost choking on the words. "How dare you even ask?" Kartha turned back to Sainairs, quite surprised by the response but then not surprised at all. I had seen this before, of course. The Sislans saw the faithless like Kartha as such a religious abomination that they would rather see everyone here die of their wounds instead of trying to save them with Kartha's help. Unfortunately, it appeared Sainairs would in no way take part in any healing with Kartha at his side. This is exactly the sort of thing the Circle Wizard was just talking about. Kartha hissed, the female cleric stepping back toward me. "Lam Tora, remind this cleric of his oath to help everyone in need, as mandated by his absolute faith in Sisla." "I know my oath and responsibilities, mutin," Sainairs shouted before I could even respond. "But first and foremost, I will deny all comfort and respect to any blasphemer who follows the ways of mutin." "You got that?" Quickly growing impatient, the party looked to me to resolve this altercation and I carefully considered my options, taking the side of Kartha and scolding Sainairs. "That's enough, Sislan," I cried, wresting the conversation back. "We're a team, we need to behave like one. Sainairs, help who you can to the north, and Kartha, help who you can to the south. Well, do what we can right here and we will all regroup afterwards." A bit surprised by my forcefulness, both Sainairs and Kartha did as I commanded, each of them traveling in opposite directions but at least resolving the conflict. Moments later, a wounded human called out for water a few feet away, drawing our attention. Watching the two clerics melt into the crowd, I turned away from them and stepped over to the human lying there, his clothes burned as well as his face and hair. "Water, please," the man, an apparent magic user, called out, his voice hoarse and weak. Too injured to drink on his own, I helped the man gently take what he could from one of my water skins, the wizard's mustache and beard almost getting in the way. Surprisingly, the burned adventurer soon consumed the entire water skin, satisfying his thirst for now. "Thank you," the mage whispered, too weak to sit up. I am afraid I couldn't stand up to the Hellions now pushing forward from the evil route. "What, exactly, is a Hellion?" Ariana asked politely, a question on my mind as well. "You'll find out soon enough," the weary man replied, a hint of a smile returning to his face. "They haven't been seen in 10 centuries. Now, they're about to overwhelm us all." Everyone knew the stories, of course. Hellions were the demonic monsters from the realm of nightmares that flooded the world during the Age of Damnation over 1,000 years ago. Yet no one had actually ever seen a Hellion in recent history, until today. "If you've come to fight, be warned," the magic user continued, still struggling to breathe. These monsters are every bit as deadly as we've been told. Don't get too close, these fiends are like fire elementals and burn anything they come into contact with. I could see that the mage indeed had gotten too close to one and was burned severely, his wizard's hat melted into his hair. The magic user coughed a few times, then reached into his robes, retrieving a small, metallic scroll tube with his shaking hands. I am out of this fight now, the mage whispered, about to pass out again from the pain and shock. Here, take these scrolls, I never got a chance to use them in battle. Hopefully they will serve you well. And with that, the mage passed out, his body all but shutting down to begin the painful healing process. However, he dropped the scroll tube to the ground, it was now mine to examine. Inside were 4 magic user scrolls of magic missile, party resist fire, shield, and web, the second of which would become life-saving later in our encounter here at the battle camp. We then spent the next hour attending to the other wounded there within the field hospital, doing what we could, observing the battlefield to the south and learning more about the Hellion attacks as well. Beings of almost pure fire, it sounded like we were too weak to hold our own against even one, so I hoped to avoid them completely as we escaped east toward the city of Nace beyond. Indeed, several times as we went about our business with the wounded, dozens of flaming beasts soared directly above us, escaping the evil route on broad trajectories guaranteed to propel them deeper into the continent. While the hundreds of heroes who had gathered here to form a line of battle to the south were doing all they could to contain the Hellions, clearly some were getting away. Sainairs and Kartha soon rejoined the party, each still angry with the other. However, at least the wounded here were now in a better state, we had done all we could for them and it was time to move on. To the south about 100 yards was an obvious road that stretched from west to east, a variety of tents, encampments, and other structures lining the road. The din of hand-to-hand combat could be heard further south several miles past the road, while the edge of the evil root forest still in flames could be seen to the distant south. I marched my heroes southwest, soon reaching a well-developed road spanning both east and west for as far as the eye could see. Now facing due west, I was pretty sure the road led back to the Wilex River that we had crossed days before after escaping the undead trap at the boathouse. Several armed guards patrolled the road here, however, we needed to speak to them first if we wanted to proceed west. Excuse me, but can you tell us where this road leads to? Kartha began as we approached the guards, the female cleric not afraid to speak on behalf of the party. West, past the Wilex River and on to Kathleen, one of the guards returned, fairly polite. But we're under orders to not let anyone pass, it's too dangerous. As if on cue, all of us heard several distant cries to the west, followed immediately by an eruption of fire. The guards were correct, it was too dangerous to go back to Kathleen right now. Of course, Vel had just told us that we needed to flee Kathleen as soon as possible, lest we be recaptured and, likely, executed by the inner circle. Recognizing that going back to Kathleen would be suicide anyway, we thanked the guards for the information and turned east toward all the shops lining the road. Along the northern edge of the road spanning west to east here were dozens of large tents, wagons, and other means of setting up a mobile storefront. The furthest west of these was a general merchant, a traveling businessman here to buy and sell the more common items an adventuring party may want. Stepping into the merchant's tent, a strong-looking fighter bid us welcome, one with the muscles as well as mouth to succeed as a traveling merchant. Welcome, heroes, the merchant began, looking all of us over. Stock up on anything you wish before you go to do battle with the Hellions. I salute all of you. Several minor transactions completed, Eswin couldn't help but comment on finding a merchant so close to what was likely an epic battle. It seems strange for someone to be selling his wares as the fight to prevent a whole new age of damnation wages just south of here. Perhaps to you, the merchant responded, not offended. I just happened to be close by when the fighting started, and I truly want to support you fine, brave heroes. I will even turn over my profits to the Sislan way. Trust me, I am here to help in my own way. The response was surprising, and I found it refreshing to have met an honest and sincere businessman. These Hellions are quite tough, the merchant continued, about to offer some friendly advice. If I didn't know any better, I would think we're dealing with a horde of fire elementals. But these monsters, they're different. They fight as if totally out of control, as if they were crazy or out to kill everyone and everything. Also, ordinary weapons won't harm them, you will need magical weapons if you're to have any hope of defeating them. The more we heard about these Hellions, the less we wanted to encounter one. Indeed, Something told me that perhaps we should just avoid the battle to the south altogether and continue on our way to the east. After stopping in to see both the alchemist and scribe for some magical potions and scrolls, we took the merchant's advice and visited the smithy, hoping to secure some magical weapons. A moment later, a muscular man appeared from beyond a makeshift counter and hailed us, ready to buy and sell. Scraping together just enough coin between all of us, we purchased 2 magical short swords for Ariana and Eswin, 2 magical quarterstaves for the 2 clerics and a magical dagger for Redfern. Now, at least, if we ran into any magical monsters, such as the Hellions, we could at least hurt them in combat. A moment of silence then passed as the smithy looked us over, as if measuring our worth. So, you here to fight the Hellions, too? I've served a lot of heroes over the past 24 hours, and I would say half of them never stood a chance out there. The Hellions are powerful monsters. You sure you're up to the challenge? Is there any further advice you may have for us regarding the Hellions? Eswin asked, seemingly not intimidated. Yeah, don't fight these things unless you've encountered fire elementals before and beat them, the man responded, his advice most appropriate. If this really is a new age of damnation, there will be plenty of opportunity to die, no need to blindly rush into it now. Ariana took a deep breath after hearing the advice, all of us recognizing that we probably needed to move on to Nace as soon as possible. Exiting the armorer, we noticed a large white tent to the southwest, 50 feet to a side and 30 feet high, an impressive sight marking the presence of the Sislanway here at the battlefront. Armed cleric guards stood before the tent's entrance. Unless we could get past them, there was no way for us to learn more about what the Sislans were doing here. Of course, we had a Sislan within the party, Sainairs. However, he didn't recommend even talking to the cleric guards. Again, we shouldn't expose ourselves to anyone from Kathleen, and we were likely too weak to be of any use to the Sislans here at the battlefront anyway. Against the better judgment of Sainairs, I decided to ignore his advice and approach the cleric guards anyway. At the very least, I did instruct Kartha to stand at the back of the party and completely out of sight before marching to the guards just outside the tent. The guards watched us carefully as we approached, not sure what to think. As if on cue, Sainairs then stepped forward and hailed the 2 clerics, softly patting his chest twice before revealing his open palm as a sign of respect. The 2 guards did likewise, comfortable with Sainairs but still eyeing the rest of us for any sign of trouble. Sislan, began of the guards, addressing Sainairs directly. Have you come to fight the Hellions in the name of our great goddess Sisla? We'd welcome your help, assuming you're strong enough. And how strong do we need to be? Sainairs responded, fully aware of where the conversation was likely going. We're accepting 7th level heroes and stronger. Anything less, and you'd be more hindrance than help. Yes, we're all at least 7th level, I replied, hoping to fool the 2 clerics into revealing more information to us. What, a collection of noobs like you? The second cleric guard questioned, not accepting the lie whatsoever. Truly, you'd be doing yourselves the favor by not joining the fight, you'd just be quickly slain if you did. If you really want to help, leave us and spread the word throughout the continent of what you're witnessing here. Yes, most will not actually believe that the Hellions have returned, the first cleric added. Go and warn everyone you can that we stand on the precipice of a second age of damnation. The conversation was then interrupted by several more Hellions screaming through the sky above, additional harbingers of the coming catastrophe and proving the guard's point. Wait a moment, aren't you Sainairs, one of the priests of the Sislan way back in Kathleen? The second guard asked, recognizing Sainairs. I heard you and your party helped cause the destruction of the Onyx Seal, and that the wretched circle would be executing you. My party exposed now, I spent the next minute or so trying to explain ourselves, focusing on the fact that we did not cause the Onyx Seal to be destroyed. However, the 2 cleric guards had no interest in our interpretation of events, they just saw us as the perpetrators of a new age of damnation. Our cover completely blown, I recognized that a quick retreat was our only option, and soon the party had put some distance between itself and the guards. Next time, please listen to me, especially in matters pertaining to the Sislan way. Sainairs scolded again, embarrassing me somewhat. We've become fugitives and need to be more careful. The rest of the party generally agreed with Sainairs, encouraging me to make better choices next time as well. Off on its own to the northeast here were a collection of tents, wagons, and carts clearly used to carry, store and display relatively expensive merchandise. As we approached, I spied several armed guards, each watching us suspiciously, and I presumed there were more guards out of sight watching us as well. Unlike the other vendors in the area, this odd place had only one entrance, guarded by an intimidating thief. It appears we've found a sort of black market merchant, Redfern replied, recognizing what was in front of us. These merchants buy and sell more expensive items, but they can be shady. We must be careful if we wish to do business here. As we approached the only doorway, the intimidating thief looked all of us over before extending an open palm, clearly expecting some sort of entrance payment. Cost of doing business with the master is 1 gold piece. The thief took my money, held it close to my face for a moment, and with a quick sleight of hand made the coinage suddenly disappear. He then allowed us entrance into the main tent, keeping his eye on us as we passed by. "Welcome, heroes," a middle-aged man slyly spoke as we entered the black market, clothed in the finest materials and even wearing a bit of makeup. "I am Master Kelp, and I trade in the more desirable things of the world." "I don't trust this guy," Eswin whispered into my ear, the fighter surprisingly wary. "We shouldn't stay long. Feel free to examine my complete collection." Master Kelp continued, his smile a bit creepy. "I can also buy from you if there are baubles you no longer desire." Still possessing a few topazes we had found back within the underground kobold lair, I decided to sell those to the black market dealer, receiving a total of 360 gold pieces in return. The sale was completed and Master Kelp thanked me for my patronage as we turned to leave. "But before you go," Master Kelp then stated, his actions rather bizarre and untrustworthy. "There is the matter of that little trinket of mine you dropped into your pocket." The merchant pointed to me, clearly accusing me of theft. As at least half a dozen thieves appeared from the shadows and surrounded the party, Kelp approached me with a twisted smile. "Did you really think you could steal from me?" Before I could say anything to defend myself, however, the merchant slipped his hand into one of my pockets and retrieved a black ring with a large red stone. Of course I hadn't seen the ring before, but there it was, nonetheless. "I can't blame you for wanting my ring of fire resistance, given those beasties out there," Master Kelp smugly stated, knowing exactly what he was doing. "But I also can't have my patrons stealing from me like this, that's not good for business." Standing there a bit dumbfounded, I struggled for words, unprepared for such a scenario. "Lomtora would never steal from anyone," Ariana proudly stated, defending my honor with surprising conviction. "You planted that ring in a pocket and we demand to know why. Are you attempting to dishonor me, lass?" Master Kelp replied, his devious plan working perfectly. "First you steal from me, then you call me a liar, that's just something I can't allow." Out of the shadows, 10 rookie thieves surrounded us, drawing their weapons and about to attack. The merchant then taunted us one final time. "I am afraid my own code of ethics now demands your very lives. And when you are dead, I shall take your items and sell them to the next group of heroes who foolishly enter my tent." And with that, Kelp ordered his lackeys to attack. While the thieves were quick and dangerous, they were not nearly as experienced or disciplined and we soon defeated them, the battle lasting less than a minute. Not expecting his henchmen to actually be defeated, Master Kelp quickly lost his smugness as he turned to flee, his deadly scam now exposed. Without warning, a sudden explosion occurred directly in front of us, leveling everything within 30 feet and knocking all of us to the ground. Looking back, I watched in horror as a massive fire began to roar within the area, its flames already singeing our clothes. Moments later, the fire coalesced into a vague humanoid form, taking a stand almost atop Master Kelp. The merchant screamed in horrible pain for a few seconds before being burned to ash directly in front of us. Judging by the gaping hole in the ceiling of the large tent we were in, that hole itself already burning, it appeared that one of the Hellions streaming from the evil root forest above had just crash-landed here, easily killing the black market merchant in the process. Appearing as a fire elemental, but something entirely different, the Hellion screamed terribly as it turned in our direction, a cry not unlike a banshee, a terrible, painful, soul-draining wail that was almost as sad as it was terrifying. The monster had been wounded in its fall to the ground here, but common sense still warned us that the Infernal was a very dangerous adversary as it moved in our direction to attack. Recalling the words of the regular merchant earlier, we assaulted the Hellion with our newly purchased magical weapons, several blows of which did seem to harm the already wounded monster. However, each successful blow also burned us to a small degree, the Hellion fire so incredibly powerful. Undeterred, my entire party fought valiantly against the demon, soon taking it down. Having somehow defeated the fiery infernal, we watched as the monster disintegrated into a large pile of ash, wailing once more in absolute sadness. For a moment, I almost sensed a living humanoid within the flames, but the apparition was immediately gone and the area soon grew silent. Likely the bravest in our party, Huelsman was the first to approach the smoldering ash of the Hellion corpse, just as stunned as the rest of us over what we had just witnessed. "So that's a Hellion," the fighter commented, poking at the remains with his blade. "I've never before witnessed such a dangerous thing. There are hundreds, probably thousands of them, escaping the evil route as we speak," Redfern added, looking into the sky through the burned roof of the tent. "Now what?" Sifting through the ashen remains of the Hellion, we also found a few remains of Master Kelp who just happened to be standing in the very spot the Hellion had landed on minutes ago. Surprisingly, I then found the same ring he claimed had just been stolen by me. Black in color, the ring was quite cool to the touch and I assumed it was magical. Its previous owner now deceased, I handed the ring of fire resistance to Huelsman and then led my heroes out of the burning tent. Escaping south from the burning tents, several local merchants quickly gathering to smother the flames with buckets of water, we crossed the road leading west to east again and soon arrived at what we assumed was a structure dedicated to the inner circle here within the battle camp. As we approached the impressive column of glowing, silver-blue stone, our skin began to tingle, a sort of physical warning that we were about to trespass on official wizardry ground. Still standing 30 feet away, I noticed that the tower had no doors, windows, or any other obvious way to enter. "This is the base for the inner circle," Redfern recognized. "I am sure the Druistics need a base of operations here so they can keep an eye on the Sislands as well as the Hellions escaping from the Evil Root Forest. We're fugitives now regarding the circle, we need to leave at once." Yes, this decision was quite easy, until the situation changes, we needed to stay clear of anything involving the inner circle. Led by Redfern, our party instinctively backed away, heading west again toward a small cliff further to the south. Moving away from the main road a quarter of a mile, we soon reached a relatively high ridge, affording a view to the south where we could see the gathered army of heroes bravely defending the land here from the invading Hellions that were escaping the Evil Root Forest. The sight was quite spectacular, hundreds of adventurers doing battle with dozens and dozens of demonic Hellions, each appearing as monstrous, and, often, airborne fire elementals. From the vantage point, it sure seemed foolish to want to proceed south and engage with the Hellions. "And so it begins, a new age of damnation," Redfern whispered, breaking the party's silence. "It's not our fault," Huelsman replied, staring ahead at the massive battle as well. "We tried to stop it, this is between the Sislands and the Circle now. It's not just our fight," Sainairs responded, needing to correct Huelsman. "It's all our fight. Does that mean we should join them?" Cartha wondered, challenging me as the party leader to respond. "I do feel somewhat responsible," I replied, continuing to watch the battle from afar. "We have a scroll of party resist fire and Huelsman now has that ring of fire resistance, let's go see what we can do to help." My fellow heroes weren't quite sure if we were ready to stand and face such aggressive monsters, even if we would be fighting alongside so many higher level heroes as well. But they did trust me and, coupled with our magical weapons, scroll, and ring, we headed further south, daring to join the epic battle. Merely approaching the front lines here between the gathered characters and the dozens of Hellions escaping from the Evil Root Forest was both heroically intense as well as utterly frightening, both sides locked in heated combat, and I do mean heated. All kinds of higher-level heroes, soldiers, Sislands, circle wizards, and officials had come to keep the monsters from spreading northward, and while most of the Hellions did seem unable to break through, every now and then one or two would leap high above the action and hurl themselves northward, likely to attack and maim the good people far beyond where we currently stood. As we approached, I could already feel the heat from the Hellion horde beyond. If we intended to join the battle and fight hand-to-hand with these infernals, we would definitely be burned badly without some sort of fire resistance. Recognizing this, Sainairs read the scroll of party resist fire and at once the magical fire was no longer hot or painful to us, we could still feel the warmth but we weren't harmed by it. Braving the heat, the pyrotechnics flying about and the significant bush fires burning all around us, we then made our way further south toward the front lines, about to try our hand in battle against the invading Hellions. Surveying the battlefield through all the fire and smoke, we looked for where our party could do the most good without exposing ourselves too much to the enemy. The Hellions were quick, however, and while they couldn't fly as freely as a hawk, they could lift themselves high into the air, which seemed to be their favorite method to attack. Now on the front lines, it didn't take long before a pair of the Hellions spotted our party and wailed loudly before rushing to attack. "Here they come!" Eswin shouted over the din of battle all around us. "Need a little help?" Standing there was a tall, handsome human fighter with a blonde ponytail and a confidence sorely needed in this location. Indeed, a hero of higher level was offering his assistance, and just in time as the two Hellions swooped in against us. "I am Ale1. Let's send these monsters back to hell, shall we?" Certainly not about to pass up the chance to have a higher level hero fight alongside our party, we welcomed Ale1 as a fellow combatant as the Hellions leaped upon us, striking with horrific fury. Fighting with everything we had, the two Hellions proved to be incredibly difficult opponents, not only burning us despite our magical protection but occasionally wailing as well, chilling our very souls and causing a few of us to be momentarily frozen with fear. Had Ale1 not stepped in to assist us, we very likely would have been defeated and even destroyed by the monsters. Several wild minutes later, however, Ariana put one of the Hellions down, and shortly after the second was slain by Eswin, we had destroyed both fiery monsters. "That's a few more Hellions out of the way," Ale1 shouted victoriously, the bold warrior raising his gleaming blade high into the air. Despite all the chaos around our party, I couldn't help but smile at the action. "Well fought," Ale1 then said with a hearty, heroic grin, acknowledging our own prowess. "None of you actually belong out here, but what you lack in common sense you seem to make up for in courage. Until next time." And with that, Ale1 turned to the group on our right, the party of heroes not doing so well against their own small horde of Hellions and clearly requiring Ale1's help. As he leaped away, I wondered if we would see Ale1 again sometime. About to thank the fighter for his critical assistance, Ariana pointed back toward the evil root forest, utter shock on her face. Now approaching was a small army of Hellions, far too many for us to deal with. A variety of warning horns and ringing bells began to sound along the battlefront, all the gathered heroes here recognizing that things had just gone from bad to much, much worse. This was likely a good time to turn and run. The approaching Hellion horde would arrive within the next few minutes, and there was no telling whether the line of heroes here, already tired from their battles over the last 12 to 24 hours, could absorb yet another wave of monsters. All in agreement, we turned and fled north again, all of us recognizing that to stay and continue to fight would have been suicide. Reaching the vantage point a half-mile to the north again, we turned back and watched as the small army of Hellions slammed into the front lines below, the resulting maelstrom of fire and smoke and charred debris so thick we could no longer tell what was happening. Intuition warned us that even this vantage point was no longer safe, so we headed back to the road and immediately marched east, quickly leaving the battle camp behind. And that's a wrap of episode number 12, Hellion Battlecamp. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.